couple of points. I'm going to make a comment, and then we're going to turn the time over to the Streets Department to go through their performance report. On the possum issue that was raised here a few minutes ago, I just want to clarify for the council. The Animal Control Advisory Board is holding their monthly meeting this Thursday, and this issue is going to be talked about again with that board. I would expect that they're going to take a position on what we ought to be doing, and we'll come back to the City Council in a work session format and relay that information to the council after they've given their opinion and direction, their advice. So it will be coming back to you in that discussion format. I would like to have the Street Department now come up and do their
Thank you, Mr. Olson, and I also appreciate the update on the possum issue.
Okay. Yes. Good morning. My name is Valerie Gray. I'm the Director of Street Operations, and I will present to you this morning the Street Department CPR, or City Performance Report. It's on the screen. Hopefully you can see it. The Street Operations is a part of the city's Public Works group, and its department mission is shown here in the center of the page: to manage, maintain, and develop the city's street system. The good news is, with the recent reorg in December, traffic engineering, traffic signs and markings has been transferred to street operations, and now the department is all-inclusive of all the primary functions that's necessary to help move our street department towards being the benchmark street department in the state. The operations profile, which you'll see here, yes, it worked. The operations profile here to the right provides key data to describe the city's street network system. The data allows for a quick comparison of our city to other cities. Some of our characteristics, you can see here, is the average pavement condition index, or PCI, is the first thing right here, is 54 out of 100. The total street work network in square yards, because we talk about in square yards quite a bit, is 20.9 million. The total street network in miles is, if you look here, 1,234. There are 245 signalized intersections and approximately 47,000 traffic signs in the city of Corpus Christi. To the left, you'll see the baseline information, which is collected over the last 4 years, 4 fiscal years. And here you will see the number of complaints received for some of our key areas, like signals, signs, pothole complaints resolution, and the number of potholes repaired. You will also see the square yards of work done by operations for seal coat, base failure repairs, crack sealing, and square yards of base failure work done by the minor IDIQ contract that supplements our operations and that we've been working for. Lastly, you'll see down here, right down about there, is shown the full-time equivalents, or FTEs, that are budgeted over the last 4 years for street operations, and the operational budget total expenditures, which have been relatively flat. Now, this is through last year. Also on this chart, you can see that under number of potholes repaired, you'll see that in fiscal year 2010, the count was a lot higher. Let me see if I can circle it. It's 213,000, was a lot higher due to the rainy period we had in 2010, whereas the count has decreased substantially in the last 3 years due to the drought-like period we've had in the last years, where we've had little to no rain. On the square yards of asphalt surface crack seal, you'll see it right here in the center of the page, you'll notice that our numbers has substantially increased in the last 2 years as we've focused in the department on preventative maintenance, and we've recently purchased with your approval, 2 crack seal machines, and we've been out crack sealing more of our city streets, and so we've increased in that square yardage as well. Prior to this, we had to rent a unit, and then every year we'd rent a unit. Now having 2 in-house, it allows us to include it in a regular maintenance program. We will be working to update our department CPR to include work done by the Street Preventative Maintenance Program, which I know that a lot of you are wondering about. We don't have it here, but the SPMP that's recently underway last month and going on right now, we want to put some of that in the baseline information to give you an update on how we're doing, and then to include data for, say, reconstruction work that's done through the bond program, to have a total inclusive street department report. Right now, it doesn't show what we do in a bond program as far as the square yardage, and we'd like to include that as well. We also are hoping to add some national standard comparisons for some of our traffic activities, so that you can take a look at some of the things we do with our signals or our signs on the national level. So we're going to keep working to enhance the card. And finally, let's see if I can pull this down. Hold on a minute. Oh, wait, arrow. If you look at the bottom of the page, you'll see street operation has 3 mission elements. The first is to enhance mobility, safety, and reliability performance of the city street system. The second one is to maintain street pavements and associated improvements and appurtenances. And the third one is to plan and develop the expansion of the street system. Those are our focus mission elements where we have set our goals and measures. And most of the data you'll see in this section and like above is the metrics are pulled out automatically because they're captured in Maximo. We also use Maximo in our department. And so it's automatically fed into the system for us to monitor. So that's one thing I want to point out. If you take a look at the first 3 measures, they are just that: counts of complaints received or reported. At the top, you'll see the potholes we repaired. Here, you'll see that's calls that's going to the call center. So that's why the numbers say under pothole complaints reported may look a lot different. It's the number of calls to the call center. And what I'm going to do is open this up. You'll see the chart. This is just an example of one of them. You'll see what I was telling you. They went up a little bit more in this past year because we've had a little bit more rain, which has caused more of the pothole calls to come in. But we're working. We've got about 4 more months to collect data so that we can compare to the previous year and take a look at how well we did over the time period. Okay, and then let me close that out your way. Okay, and the last 4 measures you'll see on this page, you'll see with the targets. This helps us to keep on track with our work that's budgeted for the fiscal year, that our operations do. So you'll see it here in square yards. You'll see what we've done so far and what we did last year. You'll see that under the crack sealing numbers, let me come back here and see if I can do it. Under the crack sealing numbers, for the present year, and with the 4 more months that we have to come, we'll probably be very close to what we had done last year. And that's a good thing for us to continue to try to surpass that. Additionally, you will see note for the square yards of seal coat applied, which is right there. You'll see that we're far from our target, and you'll wonder what's happening here. But what's happening is we in-house are gearing up to do our seal coat operations, which is weather dependent. So we're truly waiting for that optimal weather, which is in the high 50s, so that when we do our seals, we don't lose a lot of rock. But in the meantime, what the crews are doing the prep work on those areas so that we can be ready to go. We're going to be starting real short, and we're hoping to meet our goal as well. And that's what we have budgeted in operations to do.
Increased proportionately to the street maintenance fee, correct?
That is correct. This is the work that we're doing in conjunction with the SPMP. As we told you, there was a part that you had approved on the locations. We've been prepping those areas, and those are the ones we're going to be doing in-house with our crews. Okay?
I just want for people to understand that's why it's proportionally so much higher, is because of what we voted on to address
Yes,
the
ma'am.
street maintenance issue.
Yes, it is. It has made a big impact on how much we get to do in a given year. We have more work to do to improve our CPR, especially with the reorg changes that we're going through and some department restructuring that we're looking at, and with the overall street improvement plan implementation. We will continue to refine our metrics, and our CPR is really a work in progress. So with that, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
You know, given our 7-year cycle goal with the street maintenance fee, I would guess that all of these metrics are going to be a 180 in 7 years. And I guess understanding also the costs and even the number of potholes. Let's say we have rainy seasons, given our new standards metrics that we have in, I would think that those hopefully will decrease also because of having less base failure.
That is correct. I think what we're doing is focusing more to try to move to be more proactive instead of reactive.
Good.
And working on those base failures, which a lot of people call in. If you see that one, it says pothole plates reported. People call in a lot of things that they think is a pothole and it's really a base failure. So with that, yes, we are doing a lot more work and trying to catch some of those areas so that when it does rain, we won't have as many occur. So
My last question is, you know, I was so happy to see Steve Klepper in the audience because that means Maximo's also at work. But has there been benchmarks now that we have this new program for consideration on money saved of how to measure in Maximo? Has there been another holistic view on how to approach it? I'm glad to hear about, of course, being more proactive, of course, but also these measurements are totally going to change.
Right. Well, one of the things I'm looking at in the department is putting together a database citywide on all streets that would have all the information, and it would incorporate the life cycle that was passed for the 30-year streets, so that every street section, if you go to it, would have all the information that is needed about that section. What is the last thing that was done to it? What's the next thing that would need to be done to it? And using Maximo and some of the other tools that we have, we're hoping to be able to produce those type of documents for you in the future to show how much, as far as the money saved in the work being done. Because of course, when it comes to maintenance programs, if you maintain it, it won't move into the cycle of needing to be reconstructed. If we catch it and we maintain it, and we maintain the street that's in good condition, it doesn't fall over into the need of reconstruction. And that's what we're shooting for in the entire life cycle.
And I'm hoping that now is the time that we put in these benchmarks of anticipation, because it will have a total different output of numbers and sustainability with these new standards and actions and investments of resources that we put into place. So I'm hoping that we really take a step back and deal with that. Dan, did you want to add to that conversation?
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out one thing with respect to the overall metric. The maintenance program, remember there's 4 elements to the program: maintenance, reconstruction of arterials collectors, reconstruction of local roads, which we're going to talk about here shortly, and then the policy. And we've dealt with 3. The maintenance is to keep the good streets good, but that's only about half the streets in the city. And so when you look at the weighted PCI metric, over the next 7 years, we'll keep the good streets good, but that really is going to start changing as we hit the reconstruction program. And that's a lot longer view than just the next 7 years. So I don't want to build false hope that we're going to see that number go from 54 to 64 to 74 over the next 7 years, because it's going to take a little longer than that. It's a lot longer view because half our streets need to be reconstructed. So I just wanted to clarify.
No, that's an excellent distinction, and maybe that could be the clarification as far as the new construction, the maintenance, and that way you can be comparing apples and apples. So that's wonderful. I appreciate that. Oh, Mr. McGill.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of items. One, I believe there were 5 recommendations from the street committee, but because the last one was infill policies, but that's a discussion for another day, I guess. On the first mission element,
Yes.
where we see a number of traffic signal complaints received and traffic sign complaints received,
Yes.
I think that's a particularly good point that you brought up, that a lot of times when citizens call in on a pothole, it may be indeed a base failure.
Right.
And if we've got half of, if not more of the city needing reconstruction, then
That's right.
I'm looking at these metrics and just a way to be able to measure based off of the experience that I've had with you and your department, which is exceptional responsiveness.
Thank you.
I would say let's go 2 steps further. One, is it a candidate for pothole repair, and how quickly was it resolved?
Okay.
and responded to. And I think if our metric is based off responsiveness and addressing the candidate for a true pothole repair, then I think that gives a better view for people to know and understand how responsive you guys are. Because I do have to say, and I don't say it often, but I will say, Mr. Olson, they've been exceptional in responding to it. And maybe because I'm a council member, I don't know, but I will say that Ms. Gray, right, exactly. And I do have to say, I saw you present at the Lindale neighborhood meeting, and exceptional work. So thank you very much. I appreciate what each of you and your department does. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Ms. McIntyre?
Thank you. Thank you for all your work. I know you guys have just undergone so much, just with the street maintenance fee and reorganization and everything, and you just have so many things going on and are doing a great job with that. I had a couple of questions, and one of them in particular with potholes is do we track repeat offenders? Potholes that keep recurring because of the repair, in particular, looking at either how we're doing it, or is there something more underlying? And I know you talked about the base failure, but is there something else we might look at for repeat offenders?
Right. That's a good question that you asked, because we have special material that we use when it's wet and when the potholes seem to occur more frequently. And a lot of times when we go back, people are like, well, why don't you fix it right the first time because it's coming out? Well, a lot of times, if it's in areas where we're fixing it and the street is in total disrepair and in need of repair, the material will hold for a time being. But in some areas where you have a cluster of potholes, what we've done is gone back when it's dry and we've done more skin patches. And part of the restructuring in the department is if you do a skin patch where you're taking out a section or you're patching over the area of the edges of the pothole, it tends to hold a lot longer. And we've started to do that so that we wouldn't end up going back when it rains. I think what you're seeing occurring is the areas where the potholes are happening in areas where the streets are in bad condition. So we're putting it in and we're doing the best we can to hold it together to keep it safe, because that's our liability as a city. But to have every pothole stay and never come out is a hard thing. But we have gone back and we have, after repairing a cluster of potholes, made a work order to go back when the weather's dry to put what we call a skin patch, which is something that would cover more of the big area, and those have been tending to hold very well. And we do track those in Maximo, the ones that we create another work order and go back to. So that's what we've been doing,
Right.
as far as that goes.
Thank you. And when you start doing some of the changes based on the new system, we'll see seal coats done under the maintenance program versus seal coats that we've been doing separately?
Right. I believe that we'll list it as a line item separately, because would like to show the SPMP as far as what is being funded by the street fee, and then the part of the seals that's done by street operations paid for by the operational department. But we haven't really determined how best to do it. We can lump it all together. It's just to know that part of it is the SPMP and part of it is what's done operationally in-house. If we continue to go as we're going, we may take and push all the seal work to be done by the program, by the contract, if it's successful, as we get through this pilot program, and then maybe in-house focus more on a different type of work. Say more leveling up, more base failure repair, instead of doing the seal work in-house. We may move that and add it more over to what's being done by the SPMP. Have I been clear with that answer?
I think you have, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at this time, it's not here, but we want to put it here and we want to track it so that you can see how much seal work is being done, and we can come up with what the mayor is asking for to see over time how much we've done as we go along.
And then the same thing then on base failure. Those that we're seeing here are the ones that literally have failed, and we've come in and done an emergency base failure, and we're going to add the ones that we're doing not preventatively because they're already in bad shape, but the bond package, street reconstruction all the way from the
What you
ground up.
see listed here under base failure is the IDIQ contract that we put in place a couple of years back when the council had given the department the additional, I think it was like $1.9 million. And this was an effort to help the department help supplement repairing base failures. This is done by the contractor. We do some base failure repair in-house, and then what we would come back with is another item that would show the square yards of street reconstruction done through the bond program. Because you don't see that listed anywhere here on the street CPR as far as the square yards of reconstruction work done by the bond programs. And a way to make this all inclusive of what we do here in the city would be to add it here.
Okay,
Okay?
great. And then just a couple of other questions. You mentioned some national benchmarks for traffic, and Mr. Biles had talked to us before about our grade level, and I thought of this last week. I was talking on the phone hands-free in Houston, in traffic that was going about 12 miles an hour for a long time. And it was interesting because I was talking to someone about a traffic situation in Corpus Christi, and I thought of the irony there, because I've never gone 12 miles an hour for an extended period of time here. And so I think showing the level of service and maybe explaining it in a way, because I know that level of service A, B, C, and C doesn't sound so good to a teacher, but it is good for level of service on a street.
Right.
And so to kind of indicate some of that on there, I think might be a helpful tool to have. And then the other thing was when you talked about that life cycle of streets, I think that would be wonderful, as the percentage of streets that we have now put into a life cycle, that we feel that they are at that status that we've got a plan for them. To indicate that in some way.
That's what we'd like to do, to get it all inclusive, so that if you take a look at a section of street, we'll know what has been done to it and when it's next to be in the shuffle. The restructuring is partly due to wanting to improve what we do, as we've added a planning section on to the street department that they've never had before. But additionally, to try to battle the problems we're having with filling positions, because we've still been operating with a high vacancy rate. And so we're doing the best we can as far as keeping the work done. But as we continue to evaluate it, we'll decide which of those functions we should shift to, say, maybe more contracting out, and which ones we should keep in-house.
Right, and then the last piece is that work to be done. I think often enough it's that people assume that you know where the potholes are. And if we could get everyone in Corpus Christi to understand the whole, My Corpus Christi app and get that out there, because I think they just assume you guys drive around looking for potholes and you know where they are. And we need to make sure that they are reported when you notice them, so we're seeing what percentage are repaired within 5 days of notification. We just have to make sure we notify you.
Right. Well, just recently, I guess a couple of weeks ago, you approved the purchase of 2 more pothole patching machines for our department, and that is going to allow us to try to get crews where they'll have a section of the city and they'll be responsible for a certain section. So we're hoping to even be able to be more responsive if we can.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Mr. Loeb?
Yeah, it's interesting. Councilwoman McIntyre brings up Houston. My mom lives in Houston, and when they have a cave-in on a street, what we do is we have these guys that we pull off whatever, and we go and fix it, and it's done in 24 hours. Houston, they bring a truck with a steel plate, and they put the steel plate over it, sometimes for a couple months until they get around to fixing it. So compared to a lot of other communities in Texas, we do a lot better. I want to go back to potholes. I think it's astounding the amount of progress you guys have made on response times. I don't know if everyone knows this, but you actually keep records on the individual pothole crews and who's best, who fills the most pothole in a day. And I know when I first got elected to council, I marched over there and you showed me all the data, and it was really fascinating. But I want to say that it has had a huge effect, because it used to be people would say, oh, there's this pothole on my street, and somebody would say, well, did you call it in? And they'd say, yeah, I called it in 2 weeks ago, and nobody's come out and fixed it. And now it seems like every conversation I have where somebody complains about a pothole, somebody asks them, well, did you call it in? And they say no, and that person says, well, I had one on my street, and I called it in, and it was fixed the next morning, or it was fixed 2 days later. And I think that has getting that response time up has a huge effect on people calling it in, because if people know that if they call it in, it'll get fixed, then they will call it in. And it won't kind of just fester as, oh, they'll never come out and fix it. So I think that's incredibly important. I'm also really happy to see that we've put the crack sealing equipment to good use. I remember we did not used to have that. We used to rent it.
Yes.
And I think the owning rather than renting really shows on this.
Yes.
And that's that is pothole prevention right there. That's what that number is. And so giving us the flexibility where if there are potholes to fill, the crews can be out going and filling potholes, but when there aren't, they can take the crack sealing equipment and go out and do preventative maintenance without having to worry about renting stuff or availability, or, you know, we can just use it for a day or use it for a week, and it's always there when we need it. So I would agree. I think we need to have consolidated everything. Maybe some stuff split out. I think consolidated budget too on what since we kind of have three big revenue sources now. We've got the street fee, the general fund, and bond. I think showing overall expenditure on streets year to year would be helpful for people as well. Because I don't think it has quite sunk into people how much additional money is being spent on streets now, or is budgeted to be spent on streets, and how big of an impact that's going to have. I understand Dan's point on, you know, it'll take a long time to get out of this, even where we are. But at least we will hopefully stop seeing that pavement index number go down every year.
That's right.
Which is the first step. Right. So thank you guys for your work.
And that's one of the things we added was the PCI.
Yep.
We know it's going to be a slow movement, but at least if it's there, we're hoping to raise it.
If it's going up, I'm happy.
Yeah.
Because every year from, I think, the beginning till now, it's gone down. So.
Yes.
Thanks.
That's a critical measurement,
Yes, it is.
literally where the rubber hits the road. Ms. Riojas?
Thanks, Mayor. This is incredible work, Valerie, for you and your team. But I have more of a kind of a broader question around the CPR. And I know we're in the midst of maybe looking at the revamp of our website, but do we have a sense? I mean, this is great information, and it's great for us to talk about it here, but for me, it's even more important that it gets out into the public and to the community. So kind of two questions. One, do we have a sense of how many hits, in particular, this part of our webpage is getting? And I know we're revamping some of the communication piece. So in my mind, this is a great opportunity for whenever that person comes in and there's a reformulation of that department, Ron, for us to figure out how can we make this information more relevant and to the public, because I think that there's a lot of numbers on here, but there's some great stories within some of these numbers and these mission elements that I think would bode well for the community to have a better understanding of how the CPR measures can be used and interpreted for the public. So,
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Because if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. And sometimes not so accurately. Mr. Loeb? Okay, I think we're done on that. I can't tell you how proud I am of our streets department.
Well, thank you.
And I beam when I see what happened when I first started on city council to now. What a metamorphosis of just great teamwork and rallying that you all have done. Is there any, before you finish, excuse me, could you introduce your team?
Well, with the reorg, they're not here today, but I do have Andy Liao, who is the assistant director over maintenance, and I have Edgar Leonard, who's the assistant director over planning, as we've created a planning section to street. I think that's going to help move the department far along, to have the department now with a section that can actually help us to plan more of the work that we do. So that is the top. Adria, who was with the stormwater department, is with the street department now, Adria Schreiber-Garza, and was very instrumental with the street fee and is still working it. I know some of you know that. So she's doing that, helping us with the budgets, helping us to keep our programs together and in order. So that is probably the gist of what our team is.
Okay, I appreciate that. Also, there's at other organization with Texas Municipal League, there's some cities now that are calling and trying to get information on how we went through this process.
That's right.
I told them it was not a piece of cake. And however, that it is obviously achievable through great collaboration and tenaciousness.
Yes.
So thank you very much. Sandra Thaxton, appreciate all of her work as well.
Thank you.
Well done, Ms. Gray.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move quickly over to the minutes. Item I. Mr. Olson, is there anything else that you had to communicate?
I have nothing else under city manager comments, Mayor, but I do want to echo what the council has generally recognized. Valerie and her team and her extended team, really the other departments that have been supportive, have put in a tremendous amount of work, and they're making great progress in improving their operations, and we all should be proud of them, as you all have stated.
Thank you. It's nice to hear you say that, Mr. Olson. I appreciate that acknowledgement.